Alright, so here we are, started day 5. I'm pulling out of Oxnard, headed to Simi Valley. And I think this is going to be the final day of my trip, unless something comes up. But anyway, so, you know, I haven't seen the sun now for 2 days. And interestingly enough, it's not clouds, but fog that is just hunkered down over the Southern California area. So anyway, I'm going to go up to Simi Valley. I might stop and see the Reagan Library and call on a couple clients, and then I'm going to call it a trip and head on up to beautiful Santa Rosa and probably be back there sometime tonight. Alright, so I'm on the Presidential Drive headed into the Ronald Reagan Library here in Simi Valley, California. The lampposts have various presidents. There's James Madison and James Monroe. Very hilly and wooded area. Also pretty windy. There's Martin Van Buren, William Henry Harrison, John Tyler. They must have all the presidents on the way up to the library. It's quite a climb. Can't imagine doing this on a bike. I'm sure there's a lot of cyclists out there that can imagine that. I can imagine going down on a bike. Alright, even though it's an overcast day, it's still a nice view from up here. Looking down into the valley. These are the grounds of the Reagan Library, with the main entrance just up to the right. Alright, this is the pathway going into the Reagan Library. And you can see it's very, very well landscaped. Alright, here I am at the entrance to the Presidential Library of Ronald Reagan, who was the 40th President of the United States. And if I just turn around here, you'll see the courtyard. There's a fountain right there in the center of the courtyard. And if I move over just a little bit to my right and zoom in, you'll see a large bronze statue of Mr. Reagan right at the entrance. As soon as you come into the library, you're greeted with the presidential seal. And then straight up from presidential seal, you'll see Mr. Reagan portrait.
In the fall of 1980, there were many problems facing our nation. The tragic neglect of our military establishment, an ailing economy, the continuing expansion of communism abroad. But to me, none was more serious than the fact America had lost faith in itself. "90% of the gasoline stations are closed, the phone lines are jammed. Every day there's something rising prices. It's time to recognize that we've come to a turning point. We're threatened with an economic calamity of tremendous proportions. And the old business-as-usual treatment can't save us.
The U.S. Embassy in Tehran has been invaded and occupied by Iranian troops.
The Soviet Union is moving to solidify control in neighboring Afghanistan.
Let us be aware that while they preach the supremacy of the state, declare
declare its omnipotence over individual man and predict its eventual domination of all peoples on the earth. They are the focus of evil in the modern world.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The answer to a government that's too big is to stop feeding its growth. The massive national debt which we accumulated is the result of the government's high-spending diet. Well, it's time to change the diet and to change it in the right way.
All right, so after the introduction movie, move into a room where you see a lot of stuff about the Reagan heritage, the family, old pictures. He grew up in Illinois, I believe. He was a lifeguard. Okay, so here I am starring with Ronald Reagan.
What you got close to today, George?
George, Newt and I often talk about you. We'd like for our two boys to grow up and be just like you.
Play football?
No, not just that. To have your pose and thoughtfulness and your intelligence.
Say that?
Yes, he said those qualities are rare in a boy your age.
No, Brock's the rare one, not me. There'll be new fellas coming along year after year, a lot of them much better football players than I ever was. There'll never be but one Rocky, here at Notre Dame or anywhere else. He's given us something they don't teach us. Something clean and strong inside. Not just courage, but a right way of living. None of us will ever forget. Tell Rock I said that. He comes along.
George, that's funny. He said the same thing about you. There'll never be but one Gifford, not hero. I'm going to get something for that coffee board.
I'm all right, it's just a little sore throat.
Okay, so that was the little feature they have here at the library where you can sit against a blue screen or green screen and they record you and interact with Reagan. All right, so after you go through the Hollywood area of the library, it takes you into the room that has information about when he was the governor of California, various items about his campaigns, and then that leads you into a section called The Nation in Crisis. And I see murals here with titles that say protests, shortages, unemployment, recession, foreclosures, American hostages. And there's one of the most famous quotes, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" And this takes us into a section titled Victory and Inauguration. There's a teleprompter. And the podium. The story of his first 70 days in office. And there's the suit. There's the suit that he wore. Reagan's dress.
I said you're incredible.
All right, so this room is dedicated to the assassination attempt on President Reagan, and in this case is the actual blue suit. It was he wore the suit for the first time that day. And behind me, you can hear the movie going on showing the attempt. But there you see the bullet wound, or the bullet marks where the bullets went through, and the doctors had to cut the suit off of him. And there he is wearing a blue suit.
In President Reagan's Oval Office, this is exactly the way it was when he was president. He loved the Southwestern style. I'll get out of the way. Southwestern style. George Washington up there, Andrew Jackson over there. He was a great admirer of Andrew Jackson. Our presidential seal in the ceiling.
Sally?
Yeah?
Excuse me, we have to get we have to get a bunch of kids to walk through real fast.
Oh, sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They arrived very late.
Yeah, just come, if you can, just come forward. You don't have to leave. They just want to see it.
There's the presidential seal on the ceiling of the Oval Office.
Sorry, they can't stay.
This is an exact replication.
Anyway, our presidential seal is up on the ceiling. The Latin words, e pluribus unum, mean out of many, one nation. The number 13 is extremely important because we have 13 colonies. That's how we are one nation. And it's reflected on our seal with the feathers, the olive branches, the clouds. It's all 13. So that's really nice. The desk, you didn't hear me talk about the desk, right? This is special. Back in 1855, we found a ship, a big ship, in the Arctic, stuck in ice. No sailors were on board. We took it to Connecticut, we fixed it up, found out it belonged to Queen Victoria, sailed it back to her. She used it for 20 years. And she was so grateful. When she retired the ship, she had the desk made for our presidents. So it was given to President Hayes in 1880. And that's really special. It's called either the Resolute desk or the Hayes desk. It's been used all the time except from Hayes on up, except for 3 people.
All right, this part of the museum shows the gallery where, if you were actually lucky enough to sit with the Reagans for a state dinner, what your place setting would look like. And you can see, if you want to look at a menu, there's an example of a menu right there. United Kingdom Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, February 26, 1981. They had roast rack of lamb. There's Anwar Sadat. They had salmon. So zoom back out. I'll give you a view of the rest of the room here. Here's some of the dresses that were worn by First Lady Nancy Reagan. Who herself is quite the incredible woman. There's a book called Letters from Ronnie, which is a collection of letters that Ronald Reagan wrote to Nancy Reagan. And very, very well recommended read.
That's the worst part about this.
All right, so this is a new addition to the Reagan Library. Many of the people that watched the Republican debate here a month or so ago were able to see this. This was the venue for that debate. And what they've done is they've brought a retired Air Force One into the museum. Wow. That's quite an amazing sight. The entire airplane. That's incredible. So shiny. You can see down below they have the motorcade, the police escort. And there's the limousine, presidential limousine right there. Secret Service. Wow. This really is something to see. And apparently you can actually go on the plane, which we'll do here in just a moment. Okay, and so this part of the museum over where they have Air Force One, they have the flags of all the different nations. I'm assuming those are the nations that he visited while he was in office. And then they also have a lot of pictures of him with foreign leaders and in various parts of the world. And if you turn around, there's actually a map that shows the flights that he took during his 8 years in office, in which he traveled 661,000 miles. And he visited 26 foreign countries, and over 150 U.S. cities. But you can see there's the different trips that he took down to South America. Took a lot of trips over to Europe. And he looks like he went over to Japan, China, down to Indonesia. Here's another view of Air Force One. And this is what you might see if you were a bird flying alongside the president as he traveled around the world and the country. This is it's a Boeing 707, and the tail is 27,000. It became Air Force One in 1973, and it was used for a total of 7 presidents: Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, Bush, and Bill Clinton, and George W. Bush. And President Reagan logged the most miles on this. It can seat up to 52 passengers, plus the Air Force crew. The wingspan on this plane is 145 feet. The length is 152 feet. Cruising speed 540 nautical miles. And it can carry 23,000 gallons of fuel. I didn't notice this, but there's Air Force One right down below. Get a shot of the helicopter used by the presidents. Okay, so when you come downstairs out of the airplane, they don't allow you to do any photography in the airplane. You see a mural on the wall that shows you the history of the flying White House, various Air Force Ones over the years. And then here is the motorcade that we were looking at. That's actually a Chevy Suburban. It's one of the motorcade vehicles. And then up here, looks like you have an actual presidential limousine, kind of boxy looking. This was President Reagan's limousine right here. 1984 Cadillac. And there would be your police escort. And right over here is a nice view of Marine One. And there's a nice terrace with a view of the hills. And there's a restaurant where you can buy souvenirs, etc. All right. All right, so coming in from the Air Force One exhibit, you walk into a room that's titled the Berlin Wall. And this is what the Berlin Wall actually looked like. I was there not too long ago. It's about how high it is. Barbed wire on top. The exhibit here continues. There's pictures of Khrushchev, Brezhnev, Grabov, Mao.
Once again, the United States stands firm.
And some history related to that period when those leaders were in power. It's the Middle East. Fidel Castro and Muammar Gaddafi. This takes us into more about the foreign relations, peace through strength.
Aircraft, submarines, artillery, and anti-aircraft defense. To allow this imbalance to continue is a threat to our national security.
And down at the end, there's a bronze sculpture of, I'm sure, President Brezhnev and Reagan.
It is easy to forget what the world was like.
Or Gorbachev.
For 40 years, nuclear weapons had kept the world under a shadow of terror. It was like having two Westerners standing in a saloon aiming their guns at each other's head permanently. There had to be a better way.
The West won't contain communism. It'll transcend communism.
This is the room from honoring American heroes. There's the Challenger. Oh, here's a piece of, I'm sure, is the World Trade Center. That's on exhibit here. I'm not sure what it is.
Since Gorbachev had taken office, he and I had quietly exchanged a series of letters that had suggested to me he might see a different sort of Russia.
Come out here and another exhibit about Reagan's love for the outdoors. There's his saddles. Some stuff from Camp David. There's his ranch in Santa Barbara. Here's a room on mourning Ronald Reagan when he passed away. I was living in Budapest at the time. Video footage of the private family ceremony.
Always remember, deepest admiration and affection. Always feel honored by the journey
And with his body will remain.
We have lost a great president.
Dear the onset of Alzheimer's
There's the
disease,
Reagan
my
family.
father and I would tell each other we love each other and we give each other a hug.
We have still
As the years went by and he could no longer
Michael Reagan.
my name, he recognized me as the man who hugged him.
We have his example.
I don't know why Alzheimer's was allowed to steal so much time.
This is Vice President for 8 years, Ronald Reagan.
All right.
From anyone I encountered,
So I imagine this is toward the end of the tour.
When he opened
I
his
learned kindness.
eyes that had lost him for many, many days, and looked at my mother.
The nation.
I would really recommend anybody in the area come, certainly come by and see this museum.
In his final letter to the
All right, so I just exited the gift shop, and this is the rear of the library. And here is a actual piece of the Berlin Wall that was given to President Reagan. And as the Berlin Wall has a lot of, it's not completely torn down, but it has a lot of graffiti on it. And they gave President Reagan a section that had these butterflies and flowers painted on it. All right, so I actually wasn't aware of this, but President Reagan is buried here. So I'm gonna go pay my respects and move on with the day. It sure is beautiful. I wish it were sunny, because you'd see a spectacular view out over to my right. All right, so I'm right here at the entrance to the gravesite of President Reagan, where he is buried. And there you see the beautiful, beautiful view. And there's the grave of President Reagan. It says, "I know in my heart that man is good, that what is right will always eventually triumph, and there is purpose and worth to each and every life. Ronald Wilson Reagan, February 6, 1911, June 5, 2004. Rest in peace, Mr. Reagan.